now back. Yesterday, you heard about the innovation ecosystem. It's a vibrant and thriving network of support organizations, funding agencies, and opportunities, and interconnected people who want to see you take your idea to a product and take your idea to a successful product. Your innovative idea, of course. Kind of hope that goes without saying by this point into our event. But the innovation ecosystem is not the only type of support ecosystem out there. Another rather large one is the research ecosystem. When we talk about research ecosystem, though, what is it? What are the differences between the innovation ecosystem and the research ecosystem? Who's part of the research ecosystem, and how can they help you grow your business and move your idea or technology forward? Our next panel is going to address some of these areas. David Kiston, Manager of Technology and Economic Development at Sandia National Laboratories, will lead this panel. Dave is the Manager of Technology and Economic Development at Sandia, where he leads technical assistance programs for industry partners in partnership with the state of New Mexico. He also serves as the Associate Director of Quantum Information Science, QIS ecosystem, for the DOE Quantum Systems Accelerator, or QSA, and as Director of the Sandia Science and Technology Park. He will be joined by panelists Christy Bell, John Chavez, and Quentin King. David, I now cede the floor to you for what I am sure will be a great panel session, probably even better than the other ecosystem panel from yesterday. So let's do this. I actually have the notes here. While Dave tries to get this taken care of, let me actually get us started. Let me pull up the notes. But I think a good thing to do would be to have everybody introduce themselves by kind of talking about who they are, who they represent, what they do, and by answering the question that I kind of posed at the start here, what does the research ecosystem mean to you, and how do you play in the research ecosystem?
Great.
And I will open it with John.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you all for attending. My name is John Chavez, and I run a company called the New Mexico Startup Factory in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we have two goals for our company. One is to create investable companies from our technology institution partners, which include now the University of New Mexico State, Cedars-Sinai, NASA. And what we do is we go out and source technology and develop it into a commercial product. So that's the first part of it. And the second part of it is education. So we do run a number of educational programs working with our research partners. We do a program called Disrupt Tech up at Los Alamos National Labs, which is about educating PIs and postdocs on how to present to people that aren't in the research space. Another thing that we do is iCore with UNM and New Mexico State. And just recently, we received a grant from the NIH to do education in entrepreneurship at 11 research institutions. So we're playing in the research piece, both as education, but also a purchaser of technology from the research institutions. And glad to be here.
So, Christy, same question to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Bell. I work for several organizations. My primary focus is the work I do for TechLink as a certified licensing professional. So my role at TechLink is that of a matchmaker. I find private sector firms that are interested in licensing military technology, and I help do the bridge building between the organizations so that find companies, much like yours, that you have, the folks in the audience, have the technology they need to develop the products that will succeed in the commercial world. My background, however, is in Montana economic development. So I've been working with small businesses in our state for about a decade in all areas of commercialization, from SBIR to locating to setting up manufacturing operations and getting established. I play in the laboratory research world by interacting with inventors on their technologies, helping them understand the commercial viability of the technologies, maybe the use cases, learn about the markets, and then help get those technologies into the marketplace. Many scientists, of course, as they should be focusing on their science, don't have a working understanding of the business world. So I help to bridge that gap between science and business so that we can all take advantage of the products that are being invented and developed.
Great.
That's me.
Thanks, Christy. And now to you, Quentin.
I'm so glad Christy went right before me, because Christy and I are coworkers in one sense. We both work for TechLink, based out of Montana State University. And as Christy noted, TechLink is a tech transfer support organization that's been supporting federal technology transfer, specifically the Department of Defense, and now more recently the VA and a few other agencies for about 20 years. So I'm glad she went first, because I'm just going to say what she said. But my role in that space is as she noted, to take a look at the intellectual properties, the capabilities, the skill sets, the expertise that are present and cultivated and supported within certain federal labs, specifically the Department of Defense labs, and try and pair those with companies based on what a company is looking for. And that could be a licensing opportunity for intellectual property, or it could just be a specific resource, a research resource, equipment, or facilities, or it could be the expertise in a scientist or an engineer that's employed by the federal lab. So any possible way we can bring these entities together to form public-private partnerships, that's what we support through helping them navigate the logistics and the process and the other aspects of this very human endeavor. So I do that for Department of Defense, but I also do the same thing, technology transfer, at Montana State University. And again, as Christy noted, at the university level, that means engaging directly with scientists and engineers, helping them identify where they have potentially protectable innovations, intellectual properties, patentable or copyrightable technologies, and then helping them evaluate, helping them identify, the best and highest use cases for these. And then my job then is to determine whether or not those technologies and innovations should be pursued with some type of formal legal protection. And if yes, then the next step is, again, to matchmake, to see where this technology, this culmination of investment of dollars in the research, how best to pair that with a company that actually is going to make something that can have a true impact, a public benefit. So that's my my background. The research ecosystem, to me, it's very broad and wonderfully so, because it covers what I consider in the academic space the traditional research ecosystem, which is federal and public-private sponsorship. My colleagues and the investigators, the faculty, staff, and students, graduate students, and even undergraduate students at the university, all of them working to push the boundaries of knowledge, and along the way, hopefully developing real tangible solutions to real world problems. But then, that ecosystem extends out into, the private sector, companies, entrepreneurs, folks that want to work with us to help realize the benefits of those research investments, as well as the various pots of money that help make that happen, the funding sources. And so, to me, it's really a collective, expansive concept of what a research ecosystem is.
I think those are all really excellent answers. And I think it does start to kind of get into the heart of, for everybody out there, and this is something that we actually discussed during our Mesas to Mountains Accelerator cohort, is there's these different ecosystems that people need to be plugged into. You know, they have the innovation ecosystem, you have the research ecosystem, you have the support ecosystem, you have the economic development ecosystem. But at the end of the day, the ecosystem is about people utilizing those things that can help them. It's about bringing all of that capability and capacity to the table for people to make that critical leap, make that critical jump, and that next step that's really going to help them kind of focus, refine, and just move forward at the end of the day. So, along those lines, then, you know, we have two people from really great research institutions here. We also have a small business that licensed something from a research institution. We're going to get to licensing very shortly, but from the research institution standpoint, and John, from your standpoint as someone that has worked with actually several research institutions, what's something that working with a research institution can provide to a small business that might actually just be surprising for our audience to learn about? And let's start with Quentin.
Thanks, Del. It's a great question, and you know, you're tempted to lead with the obvious, the expertise of a scientist, the the benefits of some previously funded research, so that you're jumping ahead of the R&D game by gaining that benefit. But I think what might be surprising, there's a couple areas that I think of for the university side. I think there's two things that I would say, because I work for Montana State University, and again, supporting Department of Defense tech transfer. In both cases, I think the value of the reputation of the research organization you're coming from has great value, right? These institutions are around, and they've cultivated respect for the work that they've produced, because they're comprised of wonderful researchers that do great work. So there's a reputational aspect that comes when your eventual product is tied to service organizations that their original mission is to provide a public benefit. So that's one, I think, is the reputational. I think there are some other interesting benefits that come when, again, not trying to jump right into licensing, but public sector entities enjoy certain legal benefits when they create and license intellectual properties. And so, without getting into the weeds there are some benefits that are available when working with public sector entities that might not be available in a B2B situation where you've got two private sectors. So I'll leave it at that, because I want the other panelists to have an opportunity to speak to it. But anybody that's interested, we can talk about that offline if you want to follow up.
I will go with Christy next, because I think Christy's going to have similar ideas to Quentin, and then I'd like to end with John, because that's pretty sure going to throw a curveball in the mix.
Thank you, Del. In the SBIR community, especially if folks are new to the system and the process of proposal development, I've found that many small businesses experience sort of an intimidation factor when looking for partners and building their team. And it's really a delightful surprise to many to learn that federal research labs, local university labs are often looking for small business partners. At the University of Montana and Montana State University, they actually have metrics to include local economic development activities. That means you. And so if I could offer the audience anything today, it would be a reduction of that intimidation and to move forward into communicating with labs who are working in your same spaces, even just to let them know you're applying, even to let them know that there's a topic you're responding to that matches some of the work that they're doing. They will find ways to work with you as well. They will give you offers and suggestions. They're very interested in the work that they're doing, getting out into the hands of people that can use it as well. So I think my experience is that the federal labs especially have a reputation for being closed and non-communicative and too busy with important things to deal with small businesses. That might have been true 15 years ago, 20 years ago. It is no longer true today. They often will have even a program on how you enter into their space and how you work with them. And they'll have liaisons ready to support your needs and your requests and find the right people within the systems to help. That'll be my contribution for this question.
And I really like your answer there, Christy, because I think it tees it up really well. Because one of the things you highlighted was that liaisonship, where these organizations want to work with you. They want to be of service to the small business community. So, leaving the hot button aside for the moment, John, about licensing,
Sure.
you as a small business, what is a benefit that you got out of working with a research institution that you think would be surprising for people to learn about?
So I'm going to talk big picture and then go down to particulars. So if you look at what's going on in our nation, the good stuff is that you're seeing a lot of resources, time, and expertise being focused on entrepreneurship, capital structure, and building out things within the community that are good for the community. So from a big picture perspective, time, effort, and money is being focused on these things. And a big part of that is both the national lab system and the university systems. And so one of the things that has been really amazing to me, I've worked real closely with UNM, University of New Mexico State, New Mexico Tech, and seeing what they're doing for the entrepreneurial community is just amazing. However, if you dig a little deeper into various colleges and piece parts of the institution, engineering at the UNM Health Science Center, they have programs that connect entrepreneurs, researchers, capital providers, and trying to build out things that they have created within their institution and move them from the lab out into the marketplace. So a tremendous amount of opportunities. You just have to get involved with each one of these particular institutions, because while they're very open about what they're doing, once you start asking the questions, they're not really good at promoting all the good stuff that they're doing, because they are doing a ton of good stuff. And I think we should celebrate that every day, that they're doing stuff and helping entrepreneurs, helping researchers, postdocs on trying to develop homemade products and services that provide a benefit to the community.
And I think that's an excellent point, John, and something that I'm actually going to loop back onto and let's call it another question or two, whatever I feel like at that time. But so let's get to the hot button issue, licensing. Everybody knows that licensing can be extremely valuable for a small business, whether they're actually licensing something from a research institution or they're creating licensing opportunities for their own technologies to license it to somebody else. And we kind of talked about it a little bit in the previous panel when we talked about kind of those business strategies. When do you need to develop that IP portfolio? What is actually part of that portfolio? And a lot of people forget that licensing and the things they can capture, the things they can capitalize on, really are part of that technology portfolio that's going to drive them to ultimate business success. But so kind of along the lines of licensing, in each of your eyes, what is a concrete benefit that licensing can bring to the table for the small business community? And I'm going to flip this a little bit here because I'd like to get two perspectives. Why is that important to your organization? And why is that important to you? And we'll start with Christy this time.
So Del, why is licensing important to TechLink, and why is it important to me as a licensing professional? Mhm. Millions of tax dollars are devoted each year to research institutions for the development of solutions that are designed to help the American people, designed to help keep us safe, designed to help keep us healthy. And those benefits transition to keeping the planet healthier and safer overall. The military, in particular, which is my primary focus, invents hundreds of things, patents hundreds of things each year, but they stay within the military circle. They're designed to solve a problem that's occurring within the military. Our work is to take those technologies and find small businesses who are interested in commercializing outside of the military. So private sector commercialization. That means our tax dollars get expanded and get distributed to solve problems in our daily lives. So we all benefit from this investment that we're making. There's the common examples are the Sonicare toothbrush, the Roomba vacuum, Velcro, super glue. I mean, many of those kinds of things that we take for granted were actually funded with our tax dollars to solve a national problem. So TechLink's role is to help bridge that gap, as I said before. And for me personally, it's extremely satisfying to be a teeny tiny part of the solution that helps us all live happier and better lives. So personally, it's extremely satisfying. And TechLink has been, as Quentin mentioned, working in this space for about 20 years. So we're extremely effective and really well known in the industry for supporting this invention to private world tech transfer system. Okay.
Excellent, Christy. And I'm going to actually go to John now because I realized when Christy was answering, thinking about the flow for the rest of the panel going, it seems weird that I keep going like back and forth, like there's this stilted research institution versus small business. And when we're talking about the ecosystem, that's not what it's about. It's about this collaboration. So John, I'd like to pose that same question to you about, a concrete benefit that licensing brought to one, your organization, and then why was that important? And then two, just to you personally, why is that important?
Sure. So if you think about a company or a startup, there has to be something foundational about it. And it could be in the SaaS space, it could be software. In the mining space, it could be you have a piece of land that has coal, silver, or gold. So you have something foundational there. What in the startup community that we work in which is technology transfer, it's identifying interesting technology that has been created by someone at a research institution that has market promise. And so we typically will source these things from these institutions, we'll option them, and then once we do a proof of concept process, we typically will license them to move to the next level. And the reason this is important to the companies is that's your foundation. And you can go out to investors and say, we have this technology that we've licensed from a reputable institution that does this. And we need $3 million to get to this next point in that particular space. A therapeutic. If you want to create an investigational new drug process, it's going to take you $4.5 to $5 million. But if you have that foundational technology from an institution, people are willing to provide you those funds if you can make that compelling value proposition. So from a value prop for a new startup, very important to have solid IP. And a lot of solid IP comes from these institutions. Why it's important to me is because it makes it a heck of a lot easier to go out and raise money. Really, that's really what it is. It's easier to attract talent. It's easier to raise money. And it's easier to tell the story about what the technology does and how it works and why it works when you have someone that's been working on it for 10 to 15 years at a reputable institution. Now, there are horror stories that I won't tell you about, but it is a challenge to license things from institutions. It's just the nature of the beast, and in our mind, it's actually a barrier to entry from other people who get frustrated with it. We get frustrated, but we continue to move down the path and eventually try and get a deal with a research institution.
I think you gave some excellent points there, John, and started to lead us into one of our other questions. But before we jump into that, I'd like to throw the softball up to you to knock it out of the park here, Quentin, and talk about kind of licensing, and realize that you and Christy are going to have a lot of the same perspectives, but is there something different to you that you think is a solid, just unequivocal benefit for a small business when they're licensing? And that same, why is it important to your org? And then personally, why is it important to you?
Gotcha. Thank you, Del. And thanks to Christy and John for their answers as well. I'm going to riff off both of them because it's great to follow up and have them lay the groundwork. So I'm going to start by saying what a concrete benefit is that it's in the statutes. It's in the statutes, the law that allows the federal laboratories and these public institutions that receive federal research dollars that ultimately turn into these inventions that are licensable. It's in the law that our first focus should be on small business. There's the U.S. small business preference that's written right into the law. So that's a concrete example. And for myself at Montana State University and the labs that I support within the Department of Defense, we take that very seriously because the philosophy behind that law is we want to encourage, economic security, job growth, and we take that very seriously in Montana at a local level and regional level, but certainly within the DoD lab structure at the national level. The concrete examples of benefits that I've seen, and this is true whether we're talking about a going concern, a company, as John was kind of referencing, that already has some type of base product or service, or at least their business plan is well underway, and they're looking to augment or grow their business, those going concerns. But equally for entrepreneurs who are coming in fresh and maybe they have the ambition and the tenacity, but maybe they don't have a technical background or the IP that they've nailed down yet. So in either of those cases, what you can get from licensing from these public entities is not only a well fleshed out concept idea that is the culmination of tens, hundreds, maybe even millions of dollars of research that you can skip ahead of and jump to that advanced level of development based on the nature of the IP that you're looking at, the innovation. You frequently also receive the benefit of the relationships with the inventors, which comes with a lot of technical support. And almost invariably, when we see licensing relationships between our federal labs and the public university labs, research labs, there's almost always some type of research relationship in play as well, because the inventors, they're vested in their babies. These are the culmination of their careers, their passions. And so they want to do everything they can. And in my role as the facilitator, I want to make that happen for everybody, because getting to the concept of why is it important to me personally? Because I really believe in the loftier goals of research, of improving lives. And the work I do is primarily in the biomed life science space. And so for me, what that means is saving lives, seeing suffering mitigated or removed. So there's a very personal motivation to really help, as Christy noted, in an albeit small way relative to all the other players, for me to be behind the push to get a great technology out in the world to save a life or to ease suffering. So I think that's my response.
And that is an excellent response, Quentin. I'd like to kind of put a capstone on a couple of things that people said. And really try to wrap this back into the some of the themes that have been talked about throughout these entire almost 2 days now. We're almost done with the second day, but John talked about the fact that it provides information, it provides knowledge. Um, when we gave the innovation ecosystem panel yesterday, one of the things we talked about was kind of when a reviewer looks at these proposals, they look at the ideas, they're looking for things that are reasonable. And a lot of people had questions about, well, how do I go about with evidence? How do they know I know what I'm talking about? What better way to get a reviewer to know that you know what you're talking about than you have, Idaho National Lab, or TechLink at Montana State University, or New Mexico State University, or one of these big funded universities, federal labs, one of these research institutions that says, no, guys, we dumped a couple $1 million of public money into this. We know this works. You want to see it? You want to showcase it? That is super, super critical whenever you're putting together one of these proposal packages. Having that powerhouse, having that backbone of that expertise you can tap into, that is some of the foremost world, recognized leading thought leaders within their fields that go, yeah, this is something we believe in. This is something we want to do. And it also provides that kind of balance there where you go, okay, and this is something that Quinnen pointed towards, and it was brought up by actually Ella in our commercialization as a goal, the first panel of day one. Realize now I'm going way, way back in time for everybody, but she talked about NSF and the broader impacts, and we talked about kind of that social entrepreneurship, that social means, and making sure that innovation matters, that it's actually going to solve problems. And you heard that not only from Quinnen, but all three of our panelists here. The ability to go, we are taking public investment and we are solving critical issues, we are changing lives, really is something that drives them. And that matches exactly with what NSF is looking for in broader impacts, what DOE looks for in their, it's very similar title to broader impacts. They have a section in their proposal package. But these agencies want to know, what else are you doing to change the face of, the American public, to make people's lives better, to make people's lives easier? That isn't just, well, I'm going to make a truckload of money and then, retire to a beach in Barbados, which, we all want to do. That's why we're in this game, right? But you want to be changing lives in the meantime. And that's important. That's important not only to the agencies, but as you heard, to these research institutions that you can actually sneak one of these pieces of technology out of. But speaking of sneaking a piece of technology out of, and John actually started to speak towards this in his response to the previous question, working with an organization, no matter if it's another small business, no matter if it's a large prime, or no matter if it's a research institution, can almost be like kind of navigating a minefield at times, where there's those hidden gotchas, those things that just kind of blow up in your face and you went, I didn't mean to do that. But it can be really critical to developing those world-class technologies that break the mold. So knowing that sometimes it is a process, sometimes it can take a while to get there. Can each of you give an example of a big success story that came out of a collaboration between a business and a research institution, either from John's perspective of being the business, Quentin and Christy's perspective of being the research institution, or even vice versa if y'all have had different positions and done different things? Let's start with Quentin this time.
So I would offer that, the nature of technology transfer, of engaging with these research institutions, whether it's federal or university, it's we like to refer to it as a contact sport. It is a human endeavor, and you're going to see a variety of personalities and stakeholder interests, because when you're looking at the university, there are groups within the university that have different focuses, and that's good, right? Because they should be looking out for the interests of the public by protecting these different angles from within the institution. So there may be the Office of Legal Counsel that is trying to make sure that everybody's following the law, particularly as it applies to to the public sector entity, whether it's the federal law or the state law. There's going to be the scientists inside who are going to have interests in ideas about the best and highest use of their technologies. There are going to be other considerations that a given institution might have to consider. So when we're looking at the engagement model, the reality is sometimes you're going to find situations where everything's going to move so smoothly because everybody just has the same vision, and it's going to work wonderfully. I've been involved in those, and they're a delight to be a part of. There will be others where there are differing opinions about how the process should proceed, or particular terms and conditions when a small business wants to take over the control and use and commercialization of an intellectual property asset owned by a public sector entity. Even in those situations where it's not as smooth, I think what I always come back to is that everybody still wants the same goal. They do want a sustainable delivery of the impact, right? And I use that word specifically when we talk about commercialization. And I think for a lot of folks, commercialization means making money, and that's fine. I love money. But what I like to think of often is the money is a means to the end of sustainability for the delivery of impact, right? I mean, so that you continually go back to the shelf, and that the widget, the device, the software, the technology, the drugs, or whatever you're using and benefiting from, that they're there continually because there's an enterprise behind it that is constantly improving and delivering. So I'd say, working with these institutions, it can be challenging, but it's worth it because you are going to get the leapfrog. Whatever effort you spend in negotiating and working through those is likely far less than the effort and money required to get to that position from scratch, considering the decades sometimes and many, often millions of dollars involved in research. So there's a huge benefit there. I would say, and again, I'm rambling maybe a little bit, Del, so I apologize. But what I'd say is that one of the successes that I love to talk about, there's two really. I've got one from my TechLink DoD side and one from the Montana State University side. On the Montana State University side, there's a company out there that is commercializing a protein, a non-animal-based protein that originated out of Yellowstone Park, not too far from us. And this technology was developed by a graduate student who licensed, who worked and built this monstrous business that I think most recently secured I think their total is up over 500 million in investment now. So that's a massive success for something that started, as I understand it, as a very humble graduate student project based out of Yellowstone National Park. The other one that I really love is from the Air Force 711th Human Performance Wing. This is a medical wing of the Air Force Research Laboratory Infrastructure. And they developed what they call the BAT doc, which is I believe it's the Battlefield Assisted Trauma something or whatever. But effectively, the BAT doc is a technology that allows field medics to monitor multiple sensors and inputs in real time as they're transporting not just one, but multiple patients from a battlefield into some type of evacuation scenario. And that information flows fluidly from the point of entry through transport to a final point of care, a field hospital, or some other area. And this technology has been licensed multiple times by large businesses and small businesses, and it's being deployed. It's actually in the field, and this technology is having a very real impact in saving warfighter lives. So hopefully that got to the question there.
That did, Quentin. And I was going to say, do not worry about, the quote unquote rambling on, because that just shows people that people are interested in this. They care about this. They want to be an active part of moving forward. And it showed the passion that you have for this. And I think that's really important for people to understand is at the end of the day, you need to have passion. You need to have passion in what you do for your business, whether it is, starting off on your own, getting that innovation out there, whether it's putting together an awesome proposal package, whether it's putting together these, plans or methodologies for how you're going to tap into the wealth of knowledge and expertise across this really great ecosystem. And I'd like to put that same question now to John, because it sounded like you actually had some good stories that you could kind of tell based on your previous response to one of those questions, John.
Yeah. So real quickly. So I was the president of the New Mexico Angels. We are angel investors, and we actually invested in a company called Acoustic Cytometry Systems that was spun out from Los Alamos National Labs. And what they do is they acoustically stop cells that are in an acoustic cytometry system. It was sold a year after we invested. It's now sold over $200 million worth of products. And so that is a success. I mean, you look at those kind of successes, and that's what you want to see. Not only did it provide some resources back to the investors, but it is a product that is currently selling on the marketplace. Another company that we have is called Inventica, that provides a puff, physically unclonable function for chips in high-end devices to provide security. It's successful, it's making money, and it's provided some resources back to the investors. And then from another sort of perspective, we have started a company that had a stroke, would help after a stroke. We started a company that created a new diabetes drug, and we have a company that's doing Alzheimer's biomarker. So once again, all that technology is from an institution, and the goal for all three of those companies is to solve a problem that helps normal people. Stroke, diabetes, Alzheimer's. Big problems, we're trying to solve that. So you see that those, once again, I go back to the foundation. And as you license things, you want to have a PI or a postdoc that is either totally engaged with you or totally not. You don't want someone to be halfway in with you, because that causes problems. And the Star Factories optioned or licensed 16 technologies. We started 14 companies, and we have 8 still going. And a lot of the ones that aren't going is because we have a process of working with the PIs, and it just didn't work with the company and with the PI. The vision was different. They wanted to do something different. They would commit to some things and then it wouldn't follow through. And so licensing is great. I think it's really good for the institutions to continue to license their things. But if you're an entrepreneur, there are pitfalls. And one of the things I would totally encourage an entrepreneur to think about is getting that commitment from the postdoc or PI who has that technology to either be all in or just allow you to take it off their hands and do whatever you want to do with it. So hopefully that answered the question in a very long way.
That very much did, John. So Christy, from your perspective, examples of, it doesn't necessarily need to be a huge success story. Well, if it's a huge success story, that interests people, but even just a success story of working between a small business and a research institution for some aspect of better good.
Sure. And actually, I'd like to use my story to help connect the dots for people on how this is actually done in an SBIR world. Excuse me. Some folks might be wondering, I'm trying to stand up a company. I haven't won an SBIR award yet. I'm working on a proposal. I don't have $10,000 in the bank to throw at a license. How am I going to work this in to my solution? And I can tell you through a success story how this can be done. with little or no money, and you can start right away. I had a client that came to me who was developing an SBIR proposal. He came across some research that was being conducted at Air Force Research Lab. I helped him contact the researchers and find out what technologies they had available to support his SBIR project. So he was looking for a relationship between something that was invented and had developed into an intellectual property asset that he could then fold into his company and write into his SBIR proposal. But he didn't have a lot of money to spend, and he didn't have a lot of time. Well, he ended up getting in touch with the researchers. They formed a relationship. They gave him his support through a letter saying, when this gentleman receives his award, we will license the technology to him, and we will help him achieve his deliverables. So he had record of an important relationship that will culminate in a license should an award be made for the SBIR. He was able to use the researchers to help consult on the research plan within the proposal. He had that credibility with him and the might and the muscle of the DoD, and he didn't spend a penny until he received his first phase one. He won that award. He was able to then actually complete the license, bring that license in, use that license and those relationships to complete his phase two proposal. So now he's actually done what he said he was going to do in phase one, and he won the phase two. He has gone on to license several more technologies and win other proposals because now he's combining licenses to make sort of a mega machine related to filling potholes on airports and on roads. So pretty interesting strategy. So understand that in the SBIR world, we're writing about pipe dreams, right? We're writing our dream team, our dream project, our dream facility, what we're going to do if we get the money, how we're going to pull it all together, what our research plan is going to be. And we can dream a license into that plan as well without spending any money. You can start by, you can go to, I'll put in the chat, and I invite Dell and John to do this too. I'm putting in the TechLink Center search engine because the TechLink is the catalog, the database for all military patents from days gone by. So there are about 6,000 patents you can search through. It's like being in a candy store. Not all of those patents are suitable for licensing, but there are folks like Quentin and I that will pick you up from day one of filling out the little contact form, and will take you through the whole process and help you find a technology. I'm sure that John has those resources for tech transfer, and so does Dell. So you can ask any one of us to help you get started. But the point of my story is that you don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to spend a lot of time. You can put these relationships in place as you're writing your proposal so you can get it submitted. And then when you win, you go back and actually complete the deals. There are also evaluation licenses. Those are short-term, usually short cost. You can't commercialize anything with those, but you can use them in your research. Then there are full-blown licenses and partial and exclusive and all kinds of different ways to put them together. There are also cooperative research agreements. You can enter into a research project with some of these researchers in the lab, and you can write that into your SBI or proposal. You can subcontract part of it. Many ways to build these relationships. And that's very difficult to navigate on your own for the first time. So I highly recommend you reaching to one of us, and we will put you in touch with the right people, and we can help you find technologies that might be suitable for you. So big endeavor, but we pare it down to one bite at a time, and you can achieve it.
And I like that you did the kind of one bite at a time, Christy, because that's really what people need to do. And one of the things I hope they take away from these 2 days of information is approach everything kind of that one step at a time, that one bite at a time. Don't try to swallow the whole pig at once. You're just going to choke. Just one bite at a time, bite off that small chunk, chew on it, ruminate on it, and go, I can I can do something with this. I can do a little bit of good here. And I do also like that you brought up the evaluation licenses, Christy, because I was going to bring that up. Is there are a lot of abilities for people to, it's going to sound dumb, but if kind of kick the tires on things and go, let me take a look at this. Let me poke and prod at this. You know, a lot of agencies that do intramural research, you know, Department of Defense, NASA, um, you know, DHS, DOT, USDA, that do that intramural research, ultimately put things together for a, you know, technology, their own portfolios and their catalogs, and go, hey guys, we did something with this. We think could be really cool, and reach out to those organizations. As Christy said, it can be overwhelming to navigate. You have the different DoD labs, you have the different agencies, the different federal agencies, you have all of these universities, you have private research firms, you have other small businesses that might have something that you can license and that you can kind of develop. But there are those tools out there are those people out there, and there is that ability to kind of navigate and put together at the end of the day, a comprehensive plan. You need to plan around these things. You need to plan your pathway, and you need to plan on how you are going to move forward. So, speaking of moving forward, one of the things that I would like y'all to cover, and I think we just lost John, of course, but at least Quentin and Christy, and hopefully John gets back, is, you know, we talked about in that last question having kind of those expectations and those knowledge points. And what is an expectation that people should have when they approach your organization on some sort of collaboration, some sort of partnership, some sort of license, some sort of spin out, whatever that's going to look like, really kind of no matter the relationship that you enter into between organizations, what is one expectation they should actually have that you think people overlook?
Yeah. I'd be happy to jump in, Del. Do you want to assign someone?
Nope. Go ahead, Christy.
Oh, okay. So thank you. The expectation that is often missed that I try to coach companies on before they reach to a lab is please know what the lab is doing. Please know the scientists. Please know their genre. Please know their mission. Please have it be not just about you, because the lab is going to be looking for something that they will gain from the relationship. So show up to your meetings, understanding the intellectual property that you're going to discuss, understand a little bit of the history of the people, understand the mission of the organization that you're approaching, and remember to ask them questions. Be ready with your technical questions about the intellectual property. Be ready to give the elevator pitch, the non-proprietary, non-confidential pitch of your solution, but be more prepared to listen and ask questions than to speak yourself. That would be my strongest guidance for the first few outreach attempts.
I'd like to flip it over to Quentin.
Sure. I think I would echo much of what Christy just said. Where we see engagement working most effectively is where we refer to the relationship as arising organically. And that's usually because of a common research interest. And if you're looking at a research institution, hopefully you're looking at literature and publications that are out there in the peer-reviewed literature spaces. And so you can identify authors, first authors or corresponding authors from literature. And it's so nice when the relationship starts because of a mutual passion and interest in the technology or the solution that's being presented in the space that you're interested in. So that's a great way to start the relationship with a public sector entity. And then that will percolate up as the discussions can transition into collaboration vehicles or licensing or whatever mutually beneficial relationships might be in the future there. That's when folks like Christy and I can come in and help facilitate the conversations and look at the vehicles that are most appropriate for the types of relationships. I would, echo that an expectation that is fair and reasonable when you're a small business coming into the university or the DoD lab is that there's someone like me that's my job, is to make this happen to the best that I can, to the degree that it makes sense for the business and for the labs that I'm representing, that we want those relationships to flourish and to grow because of the mutual benefit. We want technologies out in the world. I think where I see personally a lot of confusion in the initial engagements, particularly when we get to agreement negotiations, is that when you're a public sector entity, and by that I mean a member of the federal government because you're an agency laboratory, or you're a member of a state government like I am at Montana State University, first and foremost, we do have some legal constraints on what we can and can't do that are set by federal laws and state laws. So I think one of the things that I would hope small businesses, or really any business, brings to the table is the understanding that there are certain things that we legally can't do under the applicable laws. That said, our goal is always going to be, at least for myself, to push as far as we can to accommodate the business concerns of our partners, because we recognize almost invariably across this profession in public sector tech transfer that businesses and our products will not succeed if we burden them too much in the engagement on the front side with licensing and other type of collaborative research. So we really do our best, to the extent we can under the law, to be as flexible as possible. But companies should understand that there are certain things that we just can't do because of the constraints we face being public sector entities.
Excellent points, Quentin and John.
So I'm doing this from the other side because we're going to go into an institution and license the technology. And so from the starting point, it's all about coffee, lunch, and beer. So you have this period of time when all you're doing is trying to create a relationship and start setting expectations with the PI or the postdoc, whoever has that technology. We already know about the licensing structure, the optioning structure. So it's not something that we need to deal with right up front because we already know how to do that and when to do that. But it's really about creating a relationship and setting expectations on their engagement with the company, their ownership, what are the next steps kind of thing. And so that is really coffee, lunch, and beer. And it's really sometimes 3 months, sometimes 6 months. And even after that, sometimes they'll walk away from the deal because it really doesn't feel good for them, and which is fine. But it's better than when you start a company and license it and start moving down the path, and then they say, no, we're not interested. So it's all about setting expectations, creating that relationship, and trying to make everybody understand what the goal of what you're trying to do when you license the technology.
And I think that's a excellent point to kind of bring up there, John, and really does get back to, one of the central themes that we're trying to keep with throughout all of the information today is, guys, all of this stuff is going to be long-term goals. You need to be planning for the future. You need to be thinking about the future. Everything you do today, you should be doing with the thought of, how does this affect me next year? How does this affect me 3 years from now? How does this affect me 5 years from now? You don't want to approach anything related to the innovation ecosystem, the research ecosystem, SBIR, licensing, collaborations, partnerships, any of those. You don't want to kind of approach with the idea of, well, I'm just going to see what today brings and then I'll figure it out tomorrow. No. Have a goal. Have an idea of, why are you entering into this? Why are you putting this effort behind this? Why are you doing this? How is this going to help your business in the future? Because really, that's one of the big hallmarks for business success and growth. I'm sure John can give you plenty of examples with I think you said 14 companies that were spun up around 16 technologies, John.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about that. Where are we moving towards, and what can I do right now to help us get there? So, on that note, I have a final question here before we move into maybe some audience Q&A. But we do really, again, want people to kind of think about the future, have that food for thought about where can I be tomorrow. With that in mind, can each of you kind of give one way that an attendee can work with your organization and why they should reach out to you, if not, during the event, after the event, and say, hey, can we connect? Can we do the coffee, beer model that John was just talking about? Can we actually sit down and have a conversation? And I'd like to go in reverse order of what we were just. So, John, I'll tee it up to you first.
So there's two components here. One is technology, someone with the technology that they believe has promise. And so we are a company that's always looking for those kind of opportunities. On the other side is we have a new grant to do education across 7 states and 11 institutions. So we're looking for mentors. So we're building a database of mentors that we can, when we go out and start doing our educational process, connect mentors with technologists. So those are the two types of things that we would like to engage with.
And now, same question over to you, Quentin. And don't cheat by giving us an answer you already gave.
That's challenging because I feel like I've said so many wonderful things. I'd like to, recapitulate where possible, Del. But I'd say, it's going to depend, right? It's going to depend on the interest, the nature of the small business, what their goals are. As you just mentioned, I think it's just very clear you can't get to where you're going if you don't know where that place is going to be. So having the plan in mind, at whatever point along that pathway someone might be, I would say, whether it's Montana State University or TechLink, we have someone who can assist you depending on the questions. We might not be the end-all source for the information you need, but we have connections and we have a good idea of how to navigate some of these engagement models with your local, well, if you're in Montana, certainly our regional and local research ecosystem. But even if you're in a different state and you're just asking, how should I engage with, this federal laboratory or this university, I love to have those conversations, even if I'm not going to be the final person you're working with, just because I love what I do. I love the idea of public-private partnerships, and I will support them however I can, depending on bandwidth and the scope of questions. But I'd say, whether you're scouting for technologies, you're an established business and you're looking to augment because you want some expertise with scientists and engineers, or you're an entrepreneur you just feel like you want to try and start a business and you have a passion for some particular market segment, call, email, our contact information is going to be available. And I'm putting everybody out there for this, whether it's John, Christy, I'd say even Dell too, that, I want to be a resource, and I know my co-panelists want to as well. So regardless of where you're at in the pathway, reach out with questions, and I can just say that we're going to do everything we can to help you get the answers you want.
Great. Thanks, Quentin. And Christy.
Each one of our websites, I think it's safe to say, has a place where you can register to receive ongoing communications. So I would encourage you, in the case of TechLink, you can sign up to get notifications of technologies that are becoming available, training opportunities, information about what's going on in the technology transfer industry. I would suggest that you also Google the words technology transfer and your state, and you'll find all kinds of interesting things that come up. Your local economic development advisors will obviously, well, we hope that they'll understand how to connect you to your SBIR professionals, but they may have connections to your tech transfer professionals as well. The main benefit you'll achieve by reaching to one of us in this field is that if we've been around more than a year or two, we've developed a nice network of contacts. So we can help guide you to the right people if it's not us. For example, I'm an SBIR consultant in the state of Montana, but I've worked with many states and I've worked at the national level. So it's okay to enter through me and I'll help you find the right people in your community who can help. I've been around long enough that I can probably email anyone in any state and at least get some kind of response. I don't know them all, obviously, but the community of technology transfer, the community of SBIR, the community of inventors in the United States isn't that big. We run it over each other all the time, don't we, three of you? You can plug into our network as you develop yours. And we each in this panel have very different skill sets and you might be attracted to something you heard by one of us and know that that person might be able to guide you even quicker because you found some kind of kinship. I also want to point out that Quentin did not say this in his introduction. Quentin is an attorney with a specialty in technology transfer, which is why he keeps bringing up the law. People like me, big picture thinkers, we're not so concerned about the law. We need people like Quentin to help us understand where the guides are, right? And Quentin has helped me numerous times when I have just put my foot right outside the line. And I very much appreciate his support. So you have a really talented group of people in Dell, Quentin, and John to reach to for your very next steps.
And that's a really great answer, Christy. And I think I have to jump in and answer this question too, as being part of this panel. One, I feel like I got thrown on the spot by about all of y'all, so I got to provide some answer. But I mean, at the end of it too, this is why we do this stuff. If anybody wants to ask me, Dell, why did you put yourself through the stress and ulcer for the past couple of months of putting this 2-day event together? It's because I care. I care about this ecosystem. I care about innovation. I give a damn that stuff actually is getting researched, that it's getting worked on, that people are licensing it, that people are moving it forward. Am I going to, as both Quentin and Christy pointed out, am I going to be the end-all be-all source of information and knowledge to you? No, of course not. I'm not that egotistical, for one, but two, I know where my limitations are. I know what I know who I know. And as Christy just pointed out, this ecosystem kind of trips over itself all the time. You go to one of these events, like the TechNet conference, and you go, oh, I know you. We've met a couple times through email. Hey, I can actually see you in person this time. Or you go to some other thing, you attend like this, and you go, oh yeah, I see that, John is going to be on this panel. I saw him speak at, this event, 2 months ago. He had some really great insights. I can't wait for this. This is the ecosystem that we work in. This is the ecosystem that we know. We know each other, and we're part of this ecosystem because at the end of the day, we believe in it. We think it can work for people. We think that it's a great ecosystem to be in. We think that this is one of the best opportunities that businesses, particularly small businesses, have in going, that back of the napkin drunken scroll at 2 a.m. sitting in Denny's going, this will be a cool product one of these days, and then turning it into something that you pick up off the shelf and what's in that box that you're buying? Well, now you know what's in the box. It was that idea that somebody had, that thing that they went, this can be really big, but I just need that little bit of help. I just need, that little bit of step forward. I need that little bit of assistance. Well, to all of our attendees, and once I get the videos converted and, published and uploaded to everybody that's going to be watching this, we can be that source of assistance. We can be that source of help. We can be that source of knowledge. Reach out. That's why we do this stuff. That's why we participate in these panels. That's why we get called in, like Christy last minute going, hey, can you sit in on this panel? And she goes, yeah, of course. There's a lot I can speak towards with this. We want to get our information, our knowledge out there, because at the end of the day, having the best knowledge, having the most comprehensive knowledge is going to be your best potential. You, Mr. or Mrs. Entrepreneur or small business out there, and either our event land or TV land watching, having the broadest breadth and depth of knowledge is going to be the best way you're going to be able to move forward. And we have a couple of minutes for some questions. One of the questions that actually got submitted during when we took questions from the audience, not now, nobody dropped any in the panel, but when we took questions before for the registration, people wondered, they're attending a conference like this 2-day event. Does attending conferences like these or events like these, does this actually help them with kind of figuring out, and does this increase their ability to license technology or to pull things out of a research lab or even to make those connections for assistance? I'll answer last because then I'll just transition to the end of the panel. So Quentin, from your standpoint, does attending an event like this actually help somebody figure out that pathway that they can make those connections into the research ecosystem?
I think, I'm going to leverage what Christy said earlier and you capitalized on about small bites. So I think, the final decisions in any pathway to entrepreneurship or business creation, there's many steps, but I think attendance at an event like this allows someone to take a tangible step, an action step by asking, that will it help? What is my interest? There's a lot of questions buried within that question. Will it help me? Well, what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? What are you interested in? And I think the benefit here is we're very clearly advertising ourselves as potential resources to help answer whatever that question may be, the immediate next question in that process of trying to figure out, is this right for me? Is SBIR right for me? Is engaging with research institutions right for me? The first step in that path is going to be reaching out to us, whether it's myself, Del, or John, given his experience from the small business side. I think in any case, the short answer is yes, you get the benefit of this network, of this accumulation of experience and expertise, and we want to share it with you. And the best part about working with me and Christy, and I'm sure John and Del as well, is that we're not going to send you a bill at the end of the phone call, because we just want to share that information. We want to see things happen. So I'd say yes, absolute benefit, take advantage, leverage the expertise that we're hoping that you will reach out and just make contact with us.
Christy, I'd like to tee it up to you now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So even in our professional work, we rely on these conferences, the phone calls, the emails to be able to do our jobs as well. I just was looking over to the left at the speakers in just this workshop. So Del and I go way back. I think I helped contribute to an event when we were both very new in this, maybe 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And Del and I have bounced back and forth into each other's worlds over time to support each other in our missions. I know probably 5 or 6, maybe 8 of the speakers that were here based on networking at events just like this. And every time I get to know, so Del and I formed a stronger relationship while I volunteered to help with our cohorts and with this 2-day summit. And I know that I can reach to Del with almost anything, and he's right there to support me as I support others. But that's taken time to develop that relationship. And this is the first time that I've met John. I'm super jealous that John already knows Quentin. And so I'm going to make it my job to get into John's world. And, I heard his beer comment. I'm all for buying John's next beer when we're together. So it really is about humans and relationship and contribution. And it's easy to be an isolationist, introverted scientist, be in your own bubble, hard to pick up the phone and make phone calls, hard to get out there. You have to stretch that part of you. I'm an introvert. I happen to have a particular talent in relationship building. It's just like one of my things. Drains the heck out of me. I'm going to have to sleep for 4 hours after this workshop. But I'm lucky that way because relationship is really what binds us all. And without the relationship part, none of us get anything done. So, yes, keep attending these. Yes, do other webinars. Yes, be sure your name is out there all the time. Um, be sure that people are learning the brand of your company and that you're showing up at stuff and raising your hand. You will become known in this innovator community if you keep showing up. So congratulations for being here, sticking with us for 2 days. And I look forward to meeting you in person someday at a conference when we're showing up together.
And John, I'd like to pose the same question to you, but from the business standpoint, as a business yourself, do you think attending events like this for figuring out that pathway have actually been critical to any of your successes?
So, short answer, yes. Long answer, yes. You need to do these things. You need to make these connections. It's really important that people get to know you, but also get to know you, but trust you. I mean, we have these, I call them helicopter VCs who come into New Mexico. We're the greatest sling and sliced bread, and then they leave and you never see them again. It's about consistency and showing up. And then when you do that, you will be successful.
And that's a great point, John. And I'd like to I'll answer this and then we'll transition into the kind of end of wrap of the panel. But just like what Christy said, just like what John said, just like what Quentin said, you're attending events like these to build your Rolodex. You way back when you saw those, you had that big Rolodex and you spun the thing on the side and all the cards just went blah. Well, you're building your Rolodex. You're getting your name out there. We've told you a couple of times, this ecosystem's actually not really that big. There's a lot of different players and, there are some people that are very passionate about it and they will be at all of these events. But having the ability to just find out a little bit more about each other, find out what each other are working on, find out where you can both map towards, I'm here right now, this is where I want to be in 3 years. I'm here right now, this is where I want to be in 3 years. Where's that cross section? Where's that commonality? Where can you both be in 3 years together? And does that make each one of your organizations stronger? I'd like to kind of just leave you with that thought and that idea, because we're going to be transitioning into another break. And now that you've heard about all of these great things you can capture, all of these amazing things you can do, then go out there and do it. Go out there and meet people. Even we have a couple of questions that have popped up in the channel here. Once the panel is done, go talk to some of these panelists. Go meet some of our agency representatives. Go meet some of the people that, want to be able to help you, want to be a part of this. And now let's actually transition off into our next action item here. So one of the things that we've kind of talked about throughout this, and we talked about, well, first of all, thank you again to Christy, John, and Quentin for such an amazing panel. I'm gonna have to go a little bit off script notes here because I had this really funny thing I was going to do, but now that I moderated the panel, it's going to be weird, not funny. But anyways, we're about to take a really quick kind of break for lunch to, give us all time to kind of step away, get some food, kind of, gather our thoughts. But again, visit the expo hall, reach out to those people, find some people, connect to them, have those conversations, see how organizations like ours can help you take the next step in hopefully your successful growth and development. Don't stray too far away though, because in roughly 10-ish minutes, we're going to be starting a fireside chat on working with patent attorneys to protect your technology. So stick around, and now here's some smooth, easy listening for you.